Welcome to the Love Story Vlog channel, Queen's Story. Now let's enjoy part 3 of the story, Bowing Low. Chapter 5, Riding the Tiger. Madame Ding brought along the Song sisters, Xiao and Da Qiao, to offer incense at the Changxing temple. Unexpectedly, after a short nap, Da Qiao was nowhere to be found. Alarmed, she rushed to question Xiao Qiao. Xiao Qiao explained that she and Da Qiao had originally been staying in the same room, but since she had eaten too much vegetarian food at noon and was feeling bloated, she went for a walk behind the temple to ease her discomfort. At first, she had asked Da Qiao to join her, but Da Qiao said she was tired and wanted to stay alone. So, Xiao Qiao went with her maid, and when she returned, she assumed Da Qiao had gone off to be with Madame Ding. Hearing this, Madame Ding became even more anxious and immediately ordered the servants and monks at the temple to search the grounds thoroughly, but no trace of Da Qiao could be found. At first, she believed that some villain had sneaked into the temple and abducted her daughter. Tear-streaked and weak in the knees, she could barely stand. Hurriedly, she returned to the city to inform her husband and launch a manhunt. At that moment, the steward reported that the groom BG was also missing. Madame Ding's mind was in chaos. Initially, she hadn't thought the disappearances of these two could be related. On the way back to the city, she sat in the carriage filled with worry and confusion, clutching her face veiled tightly as she wept. Xiao Qiao, sitting beside her, was touched by her aunt's sorrow, but at the same time, she was worried that once her uncle found out, he would spare no effort in hunting them down. The pair hadn't gotten far. If caught now, things would go terribly wrong. When they were halfway home, Xiao Qiao began to cry and blamed herself, saying, "It's all my fault. If I hadn't been so careless and left elder sister alone, this would never have happened." Xiao Qiao had lost her mother at a young age. Madame Ding, being kind-hearted, had always treated her like her own. Seeing her niece so remorseful, she forced back her own sorrow and consoled her gently. "Child, this has nothing to do with you. Your life has already been hard enough," Xiao Qiao said quietly. "Auntie, I was just thinking, isn't it strange that elder sister and that groom disappeared at the same time? I suspect she might not have been abducted after all." Madame Ding looked at her in shock. Xiao Qiao leaned close and whispered something into her ear. Madame Ding gasped in horror, covering her mouth with her handkerchief. "You mean they eloped?" Xiao Qiao nodded slightly. "I can't think of any other explanation," she said. "Just think, Auntie, CHUNG temple is a sacred Buddhist site, tranquil and quiet. How could some criminal sneak in and abduct someone? And not just anyone, but a young lady from the mighty Sijun manor. It doesn't make sense. Elder sister disappeared, and then that green-eyed groom vanished too. If the two of them didn't go off together, what other explanation could there be? And now that I think about it, there's something else." Xiao Qiao hesitated, her face uncertain. "What is it? Speak quickly," Madame Ding urged, her anxiety growing. "Several days ago, I went out with elder sister. That groom came along too. I happened to catch sight of the two of them, whispering secretly. When they noticed me, they quickly separated." Elder sister looked embarrassed. "At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now, of course, this story was entirely fabricated." But Madame Ding, trusting Xiao Qiao implicitly, never suspected deceit. Her face turned pale, then flushed red. She was speechless. "Auntie," Xiao Qiao said softly, lowering her voice with tears in her eyes. "If I had known things would turn out this way, I would have told you then. But I was too naive." Madame Ding thought carefully about the green-eyed groom. Aside from his peculiar eyes, he indeed left a memorable impression. 2 years earlier, when Xiao Qiao was first engaged to Liu Yan, the younger half-brother of Liu Yan's stepmother, Madame's Yang Duo of the Lengye state, had visited Dong Prefecture. The groom had immediately caught Madame Yang Duo's eye. She had a reputation for beauty and wantonness, and was known for keeping young male companions. Madame Ding had heard the rumors. Since the groom was merely a servant, she saw no reason to refuse when Madame Young Duo asked to take him. Unexpectedly, just days later, the groom was returned, beaten nearly to death, and thrown outside the city. It was said he had disobeyed Madame Young Duo, provoking her wrath. Somehow, he had survived and managed to drag himself back to the Chow household. By then, Madame Yang Duo had already departed, and the family, seeing him return in such a pitiful state, decided to keep him. Now, recalling all this, Madame Ding felt a rising dread and overwhelming regret. Panicked, she grasped Xiao Qiao's hand and said urgently, "Child, this concerns your cousin's reputation. Promise me you'll never speak of it to anyone, ever. Do you understand?" This was exactly what Xiao Qiao had been waiting for. She sighed in relief and nodded, saying, "Don't worry, Auntie. I won't tell a soul." Earlier, when Madame Ding thought her daughter had been abducted, she had been in a state of terror and confusion. But after hearing Xiao Qiao's explanation, the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. Her daughter's life might not be in danger after all. With that reassurance, she finally began to calm down. On the way home, she wept and sighed endlessly. As soon as they returned, she went straight to her husband to discuss the matter. When Qiao Yue heard his wife's tearful account, he exploded in fury. He flipped the table, drew his sword, and prepared to storm out. Madame Ding clung to him and cried, "Husband, you mustn't! If you send people out to search all over Zhangyang, our daughter's reputation will be ruined." Xiao Yue finally came to his senses. What his wife said was true. Moreover, they were about to form a marriage alliance with the Wei family. If news spread that Da Qiao had eloped with a mere groom, the Wei family would surely reject the proposal. After a moment of reflection, he summoned his trusted aide, Zhang Pu. It had been Zhang Pu who originally proposed the marriage alliance. Upon hearing the news, Zhang Pu was alarmed and dared not delay. He quietly instructed the servants to keep the disappearance a secret and dispatched guards to search. Of course, they didn't search too openly. Instead, sending scouts in the direction the pair was most likely to have fled. That night, Xiao Qiao found a confession letter from Da Qiao in her room, written before she fled, asking her to pass it on to their parents. She didn't dare delay and brought it to them immediately. After reading the letter, the couple was convinced that their daughter had indeed eloped with the green-eyed groom. One raged furiously, cursing without end, while the other sobbed uncontrollably. Qiao Yue decided to send even more men to search, but still there was no word. Outsiders had yet to catch wind of the matter. But inside the Sijun Manor, chaos had already broken loose. While the main household was in disarray, the atmosphere in Xiaoping's household was different. Xiao Qiao, with a sorrowful expression, stayed by Madame Ding's side all day, comforting her. Qiao Tu, upon learning that her elder cousin had eloped, felt no anger. In fact, she was secretly delighted. She immediately urged her father to go persuade her uncle. Xiaoping had waited for 2 days. Seeing that Da Qiao had likely fled for good with no news at all, he knew they couldn't delay any longer. He went to find his elder brother in the study. As he reached the door, he heard sighs from within. Upon entering, he saw his brother and Zhang Pu sitting across from each other, both frowning with worry. Xiao Yue said, "I just received news. The envoy we sent hasn't met Wei Xiao yet, but he did meet Wei Xiao's grandmother, Lady Zhu. She has already approved the match, and even said she would personally come to Yanzhou to escort the bride on an auspicious day. The envoy is already on his way back and should arrive soon. But now that Da Qiao has run away, what am I supposed to do?" He was pacing anxiously as he spoke, utterly distraught. Qiaoping was stunned. He looked at Zhang Pu, who also wore a deeply troubled expression. After a moment's thought, Qiaoping sat down and gestured for Zhang Pu to leave first. Duyuan Prefecture lies in the Central Plains, adjacent to Henan, where rivers from all directions converge into the Wen River. This land is considered sacred. having given rise to many virtuous and talented individuals for the nation. It is not only rich in resources, but its people also live in prosperity. Moreover, for those traveling southward to Shu Prefecture and Yu Prefecture, this is the shortest and most convenient route. For these reasons, since ancient times, Duyuan has been viewed as a strategically important region, fiercely contested by various states. The ancestors of the Chao family once assisted the Han Emperor in securing this territory, and for generations, they have defended it. During his lifetime, Chao Kui's grandfather still commanded a formidable army, and no outsiders dared to harbor ambitions toward Duyuan. However, after the power was passed down to Chao Viet, the Chao clan's former glory began to wane, due to Chao Viet's inherently timid nature and tendency to prioritize his own safety whenever trouble arose. Duyuan gradually declined. As a result, it has now become vulnerable, surrounded by wolves and tigers on all sides. Footnotes: Henan, a province in China. Wen River, a river in Shandong Province, China. Let me know if you'd like to continue with the next paragraph. The matriarch of Wei Shao, Madame Xu, whom Chao Viet had just mentioned, was originally the daughter of Princess GILLIAN of the royal family of the state of Zhongshan, a noble lady of great intelligence and capability. Years ago, after Wei Shao's grandfather rendered meritorious service in a campaign against the Xiongnu, she was married into the Wei family as a political alliance. She was known to be exceptionally astute and resourceful. 10 years ago, during a campaign to suppress Li Su, her grandson suddenly passed away. At the time, Wei Shao was only 12 years old, and powerful enemies lurked on all sides. The foundation of Yanwu was under grave threat. It was only thanks to Madame Xu taking charge that the family survived the crisis. It is said that Wei Shao holds deep respect for his grandmother, so even though he had yet to give his consent to the marriage proposal, if Madame Xu had already agreed, the marriage would surely proceed. No wonder his elder brother was so concerned. Xiaobin said, "Elder brother, I've told you before, even if our niece marries into that family, it won't be a lasting solution. Right now, the Wei family holds great power in the north. What they want is merely to use us as a bridge to advance into Duyuan Prefecture. This way, they can expand southward into the Central Plains without expending their own manpower. Once their foothold is secure, they could easily turn against our Chao family. When that happens, how could we possibly cope? And what would become of our niece? The Wei family surely still bears a grudge over what happened back then. If we now forge ties by marriage, it's no different from raising a tiger in our own home. Aren't we just repeating the same mistake that Li Su once made?" Chao Viet frowned and said, "Second brother, you're overthinking it. If we become in-laws, how could the Wei family turn on us so easily? Besides, the current situation is dire. We must first survive this ordeal." As for A fam, she is the eldest daughter of the Chao family. With Duyuan now teetering on the brink, if she can help resolve this crisis for the family, that is her duty. This was a matter that could have been resolved easily, yet she dares to be so unfilial. Truly, raising a daughter is like pouring water into sand. Chaobin pleaded in anguish. "Elder brother, since we haven't been able to find our niece, then let's stop chasing her. For the sake of our next move, I will go immediately to persuade Chen Liu Du. Let us bet everything on one last gamble, perhaps. There's still a way out." Chao Viet sighed. "You make it sound so simple, leaving aside whether such an alliance could even hold back the enemy. The marriage arrangement with the Wei family is already nearing finalization, and now A fam has vanished. How am I supposed to explain this to them? Just say that A fam has suddenly fallen gravely ill and is unable to fulfill the marriage contract." Chaobin offered his prepared solution. Then send envoys to the Wei family with generous gifts to apologize. That way, they will have no grounds to demand anything further. Xiao Viet furrowed his brows and fell into deep thought. After a long pause, he sighed and said, "Let me think it through." Xiao Bin knew well that pressuring his elder brother too soon would be useless, so he had no choice but to take his leave. Upon returning, he relayed the situation to Qiao Tu, who had been anxiously awaiting news. Qiao Tu, in turn, passed the message along to Xiao Qiao. Hearing this, she felt a surge of hope and told her younger brother to report to her immediately if any new information arose. Qiao Tu nodded in agreement. Over the next 2 days, there was still no news of Da Qiao. Qiao Bin anxiously awaited a clear response from his elder brother. But unexpectedly, rumors began to circulate in the city of Puyang, in Dong'a Commandery. Word spread that the Qiao and Wei families were about to form an alliance by marriage. As a result, enemy forces quietly withdrew their troops. Du Yuan, though previously in a dire state, now seemed to have a brief respite. It was also said that a marriage envoy from Lord Wei would arrive within a few days. When the people of Puyang heard that the enemy had retreated, they were overjoyed. From dawn until dusk, men and women, young and old, streamed to the gates of the military governor's residence to kneel and offer their thanks. Realizing something was amiss, Qiao Bin hurried to see his elder brother. He found him seated across from Zhang Pu, deep in discussion before a writing desk. When Zhang Pu saw Qiao Bin arrive, he immediately stopped speaking, stood, and respectfully bowed to him before taking his leave. "Elder brother, the enemy has withdrawn, and now the whole city is talking about the marriage alliance with the Wei family. How did such news get out?" Contrary to Qiao Bin's alarm, Qiu Viet, the governor of Duan Prefecture, remained completely composed. He even seemed quite calm as he replied, "Isn't this a good thing? It helps relieve our soldiers and people of Duan Prefecture from the disaster of war. Of course, the retreat is good news. But what about our niece? Have you received any word from her?" Qiu Viet shook his head, his face darkening. "There's been no news, and from now on, don't mention that shameless girl again. Our Qiu family no longer has a daughter like her." Though Qiu Viet had several concubines and had previously fathered a son and another daughter aside from Jai Qiu, both of them had died young, which made Jai Qiu his only surviving daughter. With no news of Jai Qiu and rumors of a marriage alliance still spreading through the city, yet seeing that Qiu Viet remained completely unbothered, Qiao Bin suddenly felt confused. When he glanced at his brother, he saw a glint of light in the man's eyes. He suddenly recalled the look Truong Fo had given him when leaving the room earlier. It seemed to hold a hidden meaning. A realization dawned on him, and his expression changed instantly. Qiao Bin knew well that pressuring his elder brother too soon would be useless, so he had no choice but to take his leave. Upon returning, he relayed the situation to Qiao Tu, who had been anxiously awaiting news. Qiao Tu, in turn, passed the message along to Xiao Qiao. Hearing this, she felt a surge of hope and told her younger brother to report to her immediately if any new information arose. Qiao Du nodded in agreement. Over the next 2 days, there was still no news of Da Qiao. Qiao Bin anxiously awaited a clear response from his elder brother. But unexpectedly, rumors began to circulate in the city of Puyang, in Dong's Commandery. Word spread that the Qiao and Wei families were about to form an alliance by marriage. As a result, enemy forces quietly withdrew their troops. Du Yuan, though previously in a dire state, now seemed to have a brief respite. It was also said that a marriage envoy from Lord Wei would arrive within a few days. When the people of Puyang heard that the enemy had retreated, they were overjoyed. From dawn until dusk, men and women, young and old, streamed to the gates of the military governor's residence to kneel and offer their thanks. Realizing something was amiss, Xiao Bin hurried to see his elder brother. He found him seated across from Zhang Fu, deep in discussion before a writing desk. When Zhang Fu saw Qiao Bin arrive, he immediately stopped speaking, stood, and respectfully bowed to him before taking his leave. Elder brother, the enemy has withdrawn, and now the whole city is talking about the marriage alliance with the Wei family. How did such news get out? Contrary to Kyo Bin's alarm, Kyo Viet, the governor of Duan Prefecture, remained completely composed. He even seemed quite calm as he replied, "Isn't this a good thing? It helps relieve our soldiers and people of Duan Prefecture from the disaster of war. Of course, the retreat is good news. But what about our niece? Have you received any word from her?" Kyo Viet shook his head, his face darkening. "There's been no news, and from now on, don't mention that shameless girl again. Our Q family no longer has a daughter like her." Although Kyo Viet had several concubines and had previously fathered a son and another daughter aside from Jai Kyo, both of them had died young, which made Jai Kyo his only surviving daughter. With no news of Jai Kyo and rumors of a marriage alliance still spreading through the city, yet seeing that Kyo Viet remained completely unbothered, Kyo Bin suddenly felt confused. When he glanced at his brother, he saw a glint of light in the man's eyes. He suddenly recalled the look Truong Fo had given him when leaving the room earlier. It seemed to hold a hidden meaning. A realization dawned on him, and his expression changed instantly. "Don't tell me you intend for Teo Kyu to marry in her place?" he asked hesitantly. Kyo Viet replied, "That's exactly what I mean. That's why I wanted to call you here to discuss it. Since you've come on your own, what do you think of the idea?" Kyo Bin was startled, stammering in shock. Without thinking, he immediately shook his head and said, "Absolutely not. Have you forgotten that Man is already betrothed to the heir of the Langjia family? Their wedding is supposed to be held next year. How can she possibly marry Wei Tu instead?" Kyo Viet said, "I've already considered the matter with the Langjia heir. It's nothing to worry about. I'll send an envoy to propose the annulment of the engagement and offer a generous gift in compensation. I believe the Langjia side won't hold much resentment." His tone was calm as he turned to speak to Kyo Bin's. Kyo Bin couldn't take it anymore and waved his hand in protest. "Brother, this must not happen. Man and the heir are not only engaged, they truly care for each other. How can such a union be broken off? Forgive my foolishness, but I cannot agree." "Leduan!" Kyo Viet suddenly shouted his younger brother's courtesy name, rising with force from the couch in front of the writing desk. The people of the prefecture all know about the enemy's retreat. Everyone is overjoyed. "Younger brother, you see it too. Our Q family has, for generations, served and supported the people under the sun of heaven. Are you truly willing to let the 200 soldiers and civilians of Duan Prefecture fall into peril and chaos? Just a rumor about a marriage alliance with the Wei family has already caused the troops to withdraw. Between our niece and 200,000 people, which weighs heavier? I shouldn't have to say more. You understand, don't you?" Kyo Bin stood there stunned. At last, he understood clearly. His elder brother was determined to seek peace. The moment he heard Truong Fo's plan, he had thought of marrying off his daughter in place of Jai Kyu. Fearing his brother would not agree, he had deliberately allowed the news to spread first, forcing the matter to a point of no return. He loved both of his daughters dearly, especially little Kyo, as if they were precious gems, always afraid they might be hurt or wronged. So the thought of marrying her into the Wei family was something he couldn't bear. Yet at this moment, that one word, "no," suddenly felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Even though it was already November, Kyo Bin's forehead was drenched in sweat. After a long moment of internal struggle, he finally said with great difficulty, "Brother, it's not that I don't understand the greater good, but this matter is truly..." Suddenly, Kyo Viet walked up to him, and without a word, knelt down and kowtowed, his forehead thudding against the ground repeatedly. Kyo Bin was so shocked he rushed forward to stop him. "Brother, what are you doing?" "Younger brother," Kyo Viet's voice trembled with emotion. tears welling in his eyes. I know you don't want to send Man to faraway Yu Prefecture. I also have only one daughter, Jai Kyo. How could I bear to send her away from her parents? But in this moment, you must listen to me. Apart from forming an alliance through marriage with Wei Xue, we have no other option. If Afam hadn't cruelly abandoned us, how could I bear to take your Man away from you? As your brother, I beg you, on behalf of 200,000 soldiers and citizens of Duan Prefecture. With that, before Keobin could stop him, he bowed deeply again. It felt as though 1,000 arrows pierced Keobin's heart. His limbs turned ice cold. Gripping his brother's arms tightly, he gritted his teeth and said, "Please stand up, brother. Everything will be as you command." Seeing that he had finally agreed, Q Viet sighed in relief. A moment later, he tightly grasped Q Bin's hand, eyes still brimming with tears. "Brothers we are, and brothers we remain. Younger brother, for understanding my difficult position, I am endlessly grateful." Q Bin knew in his heart that the matter was settled. He could only force a bitter smile as he stepped away. Now, all he could think about was how to break the news to his daughter. She was completely unaware, unguarded. His heart twisted with anguish and worry. He walked to her door and stood there for a long time, hesitant to enter, unable to face the daughter he had always treasured and protected.